Hi, Sam Bell here for Licklibrary.com and welcome to this video on Guthrie Govans' playing style and habits. In this free guitar lesson we're going to take a look at some easy things you can do to add some of that Guthrie goodness to your playing. Now Guthrie is known and loved by all for his incredible versatility and unique voice on the instrument and his ability to play from lots of different styles and incorporate them in different situations. So there are some limits to what I can share, so I've put some notable mentions of other things that Guthrie does at the end of this video, but be sure to let us know your thoughts as well in the comments below. Without further ado, grab a guitar and we'll begin. So one of the things that drew me personally to Guthrie's style was his use of single string bending and slides. He'd often get these almost slide guitar vocal-esque phrases going, and he's talked a lot about this at Licklibrary in some of his masterclasses, webinars that he's done. And he'll take a scale on one string and he'll practice bending between the intervals. So you might have, we're going to say E minor pentatonic in this case. We're going to do this on the B string. So I'm going to give you frets 5, 8, 10, 12 and 15. And you might practice doing your classic kind of bends here. So you might bend here on the 8th fret B string. First of all, making sure that you can get it in tune with the note next to it in the scale. But something Guthrie might do is combine that with a slide. So he might bend, then move into another bend. So there I did a bend on the 8th fret B, bent it up a tone. At the top of that, I slid up and then I bent the 10th fret up a tone. So kind of hard to do it slowly, but see what we can do. And something else he will do is he'll do more gravity defying bends. So for example, the 12th fret on the B string in the minor pentatonic in E minor, bending up to the 15th fret on the B. So that's a minor third. That many frets. And you might get something like, so this is a phrase that I kind of concocted when I was trying to figure out how to do this stuff myself. So bending 10 on the B, then sliding up to 12, bending that up a minor third, then sliding back out, then doing this nice little bluesy phrase. So that's a semitone bend on the B string 10. At the top of that bend, sliding up a semitone and back down, then pulling off back to 15. So then of course landing that bend on the 15th fret B, bending up to the pitch of 17. So an exercise you could try is just finding all these bends on one string within any scale that you would like to use and try to use slides to maneuver between them. Of course we could do things like copying Guthrie's phrases, that's going to be very helpful, learning some of his licks, but I'd also take this general concept and apply it to your knowledge of the fretboard as well to see what you can get out of it. So listening to a lot of Guthrie's improvisation, some of his more linear playing in terms of line creation is based around arpeggios and sequencing, and even scalic sequencing as well, classic sequences of going up in fours, for example. So sometimes he'll start them on odd beats, or maybe start in a way within the middle of a pattern, for example. So all these variations, I feel like Guthrie's probably spent a lot of time kind of ingesting those classic kind of sequences, either knowingly or unknowingly, and developed kind of vocabulary of them. You can hear a lot of these sequences in classical music and in bluegrass as well. You can sort of pick up some of those phrases and add them to the playing. Now one thing I've noticed he does a lot is this particular shape as well, and this is if we're in the key of F sharp minor, which is the little backing track I created at the start of this video, is in F sharp minor, we can focus on different arpeggios from that key, and one really good arpeggio if you're in F sharp minor is the one that starts off the minor third of F sharp minor, which is A major, in this case A major 7th, And the way he may play that is like this. Generally, this pattern comes up a lot. So we're actually starting on the major 7th interval of the A major 7th arpeggio. So we're doing a pick and a hammer onto 12 from 11 on the A string, using my middle finger to my 3rd finger. Then we're going to grab 11 on the D, that's the major 3rd. Then we have 9 and 13 on the G string, that's the 5th going up to the major 7th. Then we have the 10th fret on the B, middle finger, and then we have 9, 12 on the top E string. Okay, so that's the 3rd and the 5th of the A major 7th arpeggio. It's not quite the same though when we play it over a minor chord, but that's the pattern. And something Guthrie might do is actually sequence something like that in, you know, so that was a group of 4, but we're starting on 1 E-ander, 2 E-ander, 3 E-ander, 4 E-ander. So we're starting kind of before a downbeat to kind of create that syncopated effect. So you can try this out however you wish, but going up 4 notes, then back to the 2nd note of the pattern, going up 4 notes, going to the 3rd note of the pattern, going up 4 notes, going up to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 4th note of the pattern, and 5th note, etc. So quite a nice little sequence to add into your playing. Now that works over F minor. If you were in E minor, you could do the same pattern just down there, starting on the 9th fret, hammering onto the 10th fret, which is makes it a G major 7th arpeggio. That concept is called superimposition, if you're interested in taking that further. So taking an arpeggio, putting it above a different chord, will give you the extensions of the chord. It's clear to hear some kind of jazz influence in Guthrie's playing, but he definitely has that rock persona in terms of his sound and his attitude when he plays, and something he incorporates a lot into his more rock bluesy kind of playing is chromaticism. So that's filling in the gaps of all the other notes which are available in the key, and there is a kind of classic kind of way of doing this. It's called enclosures. So maybe in jazz circles you might have an interval that you want to highlight, and you might have something like this. And Guthrie incorporates that kind of thing a lot in his playing. So that might be in the key of E minor, 9, 12, back to 9, then 10 slide to 11. So if I'm thinking in the key of E minor, I'd have E, F sharp, G, or 9, 11, 12 on the G string, but he's using this 10th fret to slide into that note, so it's kind of a chromatic note outside of the scale to add a bit of flavour because it's landing in a good place. And there's lots of that in Guthrie's playing, but what type of chromaticism I'm referring to here is more of a filling in the gaps, so to speak. And this could be a diatonic scale, meaning 7 notes, or pentatonic. I think it's quite nice with pentatonic just to imagine this. If you have E minor pentatonic on the top 2 strings here, 12 and 15 on the B and E, you could actually fill in those gaps. So 13 and 14 on the B string, adding in those in, and then the same on the high E string. Now this is a very simplistic way of looking at it, however it works for rock. You could do legato with these notes, or you could pick all the notes. And you'll be highlighting those pentatonic notes either side, so it will sound pretty cool. It will sound like it's in key. So finding all these opportunities for chromaticism within your pentatonic boxes or within your 3 note per string scales is probably a nice quick win to add to your playing. Carrying on with the chromaticism discussion, we can add the chromaticism to arpeggios. Guthrie's playing is covered in beautiful arpeggios, as we've discussed in the previous chapter here with the major 7th arpeggio. But taking any of our arpeggios within a key and using them to highlight certain intervals, and also do chromatics between. So I played a lick there. This was in E minor. I'm going to be using these arpeggio fragments. So here we have 12, 15 on the low E, 14 on the A, and then 12, 14 on the D. But what we're going to do here, we're going to slide up to 14 on the D, then we're going to be into the octave of that same shape. So that will be 14, 17 on the D string, 16, sorry, on the G, and then 15, 17 on the B. So already there you've got an outline of a pattern. Guthrie might bend to that last note, for example. However, we're going to do some chromaticism to fill in the gaps. So here, we go up to the 12th fret on the D of that arpeggio. Then we're going to have 16, 15, 14, 13. Then slide a semitone up into 14. And we're just going to ascend that octave of the arpeggio. By the way, this is an E minor 7th arpeggio. For those who want to know, it works over E minor. So. I'm doing a hammer on there. Once I've done a slide from 13 to 14, I'm hammering on. So everything else is picked, like so. You could practice finding all the arpeggios within a key. So for an E minor, a nice little way of doing that is taking arpeggios in fourths. So that would be, that's an A minor 7th arpeggio, 15, 12 on the top E, 13 on the B, 14 on the G. Then on the next arpeggio you'll do is an E minor 7th arpeggio, 15 pull off to 12 on the B string, 12 on the G, 14 on the D. So there's 2 arpeggios there. That sounds quite Guthrie-ish. You might do, so putting in some of those chromatics from earlier of the pentatonic, and then using the top note to sort of start off our arpeggio. Carrying on, the G string we've got 14, 11, then 12 and 12 on the D and 14 on the A. That's a B minor 7. Not really thinking too hard about these arpeggios, it's good to know them, but in terms of making lines, it's just patterns to highlight these cool intervals. And then finally, we have this one. This is 14 pull off to 10 on the D. Then we have 12 on the A, 14 on the E. So and Guthrie does these patterns a lot. He might use them just for kind of to create these, like mixing the sort of scalic chromaticism with those arpeggios is an instant win. Now we're going to talk about how to construct these lines later on in this video, so keep watching. So this last tip isn't necessarily a lick or something that you can just take away and do, but it might be a practice method. And something that Guthrie does beautifully, and I think what we all admire at some level, is how he integrates lots of techniques. Now, of course, playing guitar is about expressing, okay, so it's not about technique in terms of I can do this, I can do that. Guthrie will use techniques to just get the notes out that he wants to hear, whether that's legato, whether it's picking everything, whether he's doing hyper picking, sliding and bending. He incorporates it all very seamlessly, and this leads to the Guthrie kind of sound. He's literally playing through the guitar rather than playing techniques on the guitar. I think that's a good distinction to think about, and you can develop this. Now this is quite an advanced thing. Once you have certain techniques under your belt, if you've got a bit of proficiency with picking or legato or bends, then you want to get it kind of fluid with other ideas, so that you're not just going from bending idea into picking into the next thing, because it sounds like you're going through a kind of a bunch of techniques. And this is actually borrowed from the amazing Tom Quayle, his gesture technique. You can pick this up in the Licklibrary course From Rock to Fusion, where he talks about playing in a certain subdivision and improvising through the neck using a starting and end point, and in his case he was using legato. But I don't see why you can't sometimes incorporate a couple of techniques. You might want to practice making your picking fluid of legato. So you might take a scale position, for argument's sake, in key of E minor. I might choose this position. I might choose around there, so I might extend in certain places. And I might say my start point is here, 7th fret on the A, and my finish point might be the 12th fret on the high E string. And my whole point, maybe before I even put in how many notes I play, I could just say an evenly spread group of notes, stepping stones from one note to the next, improvising, using different techniques. So picking, legato, picking, chromaticism, picking, chromaticism, legato, wide stretch, then a bend. So I'm kind of making it up as I go, but I'm doing it slow enough that I can incorporate the technique. And I suggest doing this with one technique at first, and one small area of the neck, and a slow tempo. And if you can do it with a metronome, that's good. But first of all, just to practice a kind of stream of consciousness with the technique. And this starts to develop that muscle of kind of using all these techniques to just get stuff out. And actually this is quite freeing. Once you've got a few techniques which are quite natural, you can start to really take this across the board in many different ways, and you'll start to find paths and maneuvers that suit your playing. And this is clearly what's happening in Guthrie's playing when you hear him really go off on a kind of note tangent. There's all kinds of, there's no distinction. Now and again you'll see his tapping hand come out and he'll tap a note, and you know, he might extend the fretboard with a tap. He might have a but it's very rare that you'll hear him do like a whole technique for one long line. He kind of mixes it up, and that will enable him to bring up different tonalities, which makes his playing sound really bubbly. He'll bring out different maybe fretboard visualization stuff, so he might go into an arpeggio based line of hybrid picking before sweeping into kind of an arpeggio of some description into a tap or something. How would that look if he was hybrid picking an arpeggio? So then sweeping into a tap. I don't know, that wasn't the most Guthrie-ish phrase, that was just kind of off the top of my head. But that kind of idea of using the techniques to serve the sound and the kind of approach of notes as well. I'm sure Guthrie doesn't think of it that way. I'm sure he just plays because he is Guthrie. But I think we can all learn from that, practicing this kind of gesturing technique, as Tom Quayle calls it. I like to call it stepping stones, like you're crossing a river and you can only see the next few stones at a time. And each of those stones is a note or a series of notes, or a particular sequence of notes, or maybe a technique. You can use that as a way of building your techniques into your playing. It's also a really good way of putting new licks into your playing, but more about that in another video. Now, when Licklibrary asked me to do this video on Guthrie Govans' playing style and habits, it was by no means something I thought, yeah, that'll be easy, because it's Guthrie, incredible player, so much to his playing. And there's some techniques and things which I want to put here in the notable mentions section of this video. First of all, a lot of people are very familiar with some of his techniques which are more showcasing certain things, so like the slap guitar thing is quite a fun thing, and you can hear that in Tosin Abasi. I think Guthrie would have got it from people like Victor Rutan and Reggie Rutan, his brother, who does slap guitar. Maybe Scott Miso, who was a Legato Records fusion artist back in the late 80s, early 90s, who did lots of amazing slap guitar. Check him out on YouTube. You can hear a lot of where Guthrie kind of got some of those ideas, especially at the start of Wonderful Slippery Thing. So slap guitar is a fun thing that he does, and I'm sure Guthrie kind of nicknames that kind of thing circus funk, and that kind of goes with his extreme strumming and funk style as well. Guthrie's also amazing at slide guitar. That's something that I I find personally quite tricky. I have done it as a professional, but not to the level that Guthrie can do it, and that kind of Derek Trucks style phrasing that Guthrie can kind of replicate with the slide really well. Another thing Guthrie does incredibly well is parody or parrot other instruments, so things like sitars or mandolins and things like that. So you can hear his listening diet is very wide and varied. He's also good at throwing in parodies of certain melodies and kind of introducing other musical genres into other settings, which might seem completely, like Marmite and ice cream, but kind of work because he's got this humour and spontaneity to his playing. And I think if this one bit of the video, this is the notable mention bit, if I was to turn this into a concept, I think it's to be open-minded, to see the guitar as just an instrument. You are the instrument. What you hear and how you practice is going to influence how you play. And then all the techniques that you need will start to kind of come up as well within that. You can practice them individualistically, really work on them. But at the end of the day, you are an expression of all your influences and what you spend time on. And I think Guthrie is a good example of somebody who's just kind of sponged up everything he loves. He can hear it all in his head. He can kind of manifest that on the instrument. And it doesn't have to be virtuoso, it doesn't have to be fast. I think we can all learn from that. We can all express ourselves in that cool way, like Guthrie does, by focusing on what interests us and keeping an open mind. Thank you for watching this guide to Guthrie Govans playing styles and habits. If you enjoy this video, please be sure to click the like button and hit the bell notification to be notified when we upload more free guitar lessons. And be sure to leave a comment below. What are your favourite Guthrie styles and habits, and what would you like to see in the future? If you would like to take your playing to the next level, then Licklibrary offers a membership where you can learn your favourite techniques, favourite albums and songs, and learn from some of the world's best guitarists. You can also get one-to-one mentorship as part of your membership, so check the link in the description for more information. Thanks for watching.